Just a reminder to vote in this week's Locals poll, where you decide what deck I take to Locals every single week. Without any further ado, I hope you enjoyed the video.
What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to the channel, and for today we have the deck profile for the deck we brought to Locals this past week, being Ancient Gears. So this is a really fun one, especially, if you know me, I love big, stupid beaters that do OTK, and that's literally what this deck does. So, yeah. We did all right. We went 1-1-1. No tournament, just casual games. We beat... What was it? We beat Magispector. We tied with Hero because we played 2 games and didn't have time for a game 3. And then we lost to Blue Eyes, unfortunately. But anyway, here's what it looks like on paper, and then we'll get to the card by card. Alright, so getting started with the monsters, we have, of course, Ancient Gear Golem. We're running 2 of this guy. And then also going to go ahead and talk about Ancient Gear Dark Golem, because while he's on the field or in the grave, his name is treated as Ancient Gear Golem. So, OG Ancient Gear Golem, he can't be special summoned. When he attacks, your opponent can't activate spells or traps, and then he does piercing. Dark Golem, when he's summoned, he can add up to 2 cards that are Ancient Gear cards and or Gear Town from your deck to your hand, and then you discard a card. Although there is also a restriction once that effect resolves, which is you cannot set cards for the rest of the turn. And then, of course, it has the classic Ancient Gear clause of when he attacks, your opponent can't activate spell or traps till the end of the damage step. Next, we are running 1 Ancient Gear Dragon. This is mainly just to have another name, and because we can bring this off of something like, say, Ancient Gear Catapult, if we know our opponent has like a certain hand trap or something that they're going to use, or a certain interruption in the form of like a trap card or something, then... like something like, say, an Imperm or a Dominus or something like that. Or even, like, going second, if we know they have, like, a set Cosmic Cyclone or something, we can bring this out to dump Ancient Gear Golem to negate that. So, and plus it's also just, another name to have. And plus, I really like the artwork. It looks cool. Next, 3 copies of Ancient Gear Wyvern. This is one of your better normal summons. When he's normal or special summoned, you can add an Ancient Gear card from deck to your hand. Then it has the you cannot set cards for the rest of the turn thing. Then the classic Ancient Gear clause, but it's mainly for the search, because mainly he's not going to stay on the field that long. Next, 2 copies of Ancient Gear Frame. This one, he doesn't do anything on normal summon, so he's not, like, the best, but he's not the worst either, because you can discard a card to add an Ancient Gear Golem or a spell or trap that specifically mentions it from your deck to your hand. So, basically, when you discard a card, you can add something like Ancient Gear Fusion or something along those lines from your deck to your hand. So, yeah, I mean, he's alright. And plus, he's very searchable in the deck, so I feel like running 2 is fine. Next, 3 copies of Ancient Gear Tanker. So this guy, when he's normal or specialed, for all the normal summons, I'd say he's probably the best. You can special summon an Ancient Gear monster from your hand, ignoring its summoning conditions. So you can actually special something like, say, Ancient Gear Dark Golem, who normally... would have to be special summoned anyway to get its effect. So you can special summon something from your hand, or if your opponent controls a monster, you can also special summon from your graveyard. So you get a little bit of flexibility there. And then he does have another effect that doesn't really come up all that much, but it can make the difference for just damage output. You can target any face-up card you control, including himself, destroy it, and if you do, all monsters that are Ancient Gear Golem or mention it gain an extra 600 attack, which of course is an homage to the Ancient Gear Tank equip spell. Next, 2 Ancient Gear Commander. I'm running 2 of this currently. Whenever Ancient Gear statue releases in Maze of the Master, I'm going to cut this down to 1. But basically, we don't really use his on-field effect. We mainly just use him for his graveyard effect, so we can search him off of Dark Golem and then immediately discard him, where we can place a Ancient Gear trap card face up onto the field, because they have that restriction that says you can't set cards. Next, 2 copies of Ancient Gear Box. I'm running 2 because that way if we draw it, we still have another one that we can use to do the search effect. Not sure if I'm going to go down to 1 when Ancient Gear Statue releases or not. That's going to be one I'm going to have to test, just because that way if you do open the 1 box, you can still have a second one to search. But anyways, that'll be for later. Next, 3 copies of Ancient Gear Hunting Hound. This one, when you use normal summon, you inflict 600 damage to your opponent. And then during your main phase, you can fusion summon an Ancient Gear fusion monster from your extra deck using a monster from hand or field fusion material. So this is just a way to get to fusion summons if you don't have your spells on you for whatever reason. Or another way to get an additional fusion summon. Next, moving on to the spell cards. Of course, Ancient Gears are machines, so we are going with Triple Power Bond. So basically, we fusion summon a machine fusion monster from extra deck, using monster from hand or field, and the monster's attack is doubled. And then, of course, we take damage equal to that monster's original attack during the end phase, assuming there is an end phase. And I actually looked up the ruling when I was building the deck. If you use Power Bond to summon Chaos Ancient Gear Giant, it actually does still get doubled. So this guy will be at 9,000 attack. I looked up the ruling for it on the Yu-Gi-Oh! Wiki, and it actually works. So, yay! In addition to Power Bond, Triple Limiter Removal, just for damage step shenanigans. Again, just trying to OTK. Next, 3 copies of Ancient Gear Fusion. It's basically just a regular fusion spell, unless you have Ancient Gear Golem on your field. Because if you do, then you can also use monsters from your deck. Next, 3 copies of Ancient Gear Catapult. Basically, while we have no monsters on the field, we can target a face-up card we control, destroy it, and if you do, special summon an Ancient Gear monster from your deck, ignoring its summoning conditions. Obviously, the best card to pop with this is going to be Gear Town. We'll get to that later. It does also have a graveyard effect, but that usually doesn't really come up. Next, 2 copies of Ancient Gear Fortress. Basically, this makes it to where your Ancient Gear monsters cannot be destroyed or targeted during the turn that they're summoned, and it also makes it to where your opponent can't respond to your Ancient Gear monsters' effect activations. So, yeah, it's really nice. And then when this gets destroyed, you get to revive a Ancient Gear from your graveyard or special summon one from your hand. So yeah, really nice there. 2 Ancient Gear Advance. When this is activated, you add an Ancient Gear spell or trap from deck to hand. And then you can tribute a monster to draw a card. So that way you can clear the field for Catapult. So like say, activate Advance, add Catapult, and say you have a monster. Activate Advance, tribute the monster, draw a card, activate Catapult, target Advance, pop it, special, blah, blah, blah. Off to the races. Next is, of course, 3 copies of Gear Town. Both players can normal summon Ancient Gear monsters for 1 less tribute, but that normally doesn't come up. When this card is destroyed and sent to the grave, you can special summon an Ancient Gear monster from hand, deck, or graveyard. So, of course, that's why it's so good with Catapult, because Catapult summons, and then Gear Town will also summon in a new chain, so you can just get 2 monsters on the field like that. Really great. And then finally, rounding out the main deck is our 1-trap card, Ancient Gear Duel. So Ancient Gear Golem and monsters that mention it in your monster zone are unaffected by your opponent's activated monster effects, so that's really nice. And then if your opponent has a monster on their field, you can fusion summon a fusion monster that mentions Ancient Gear Golem from your extra deck by banishing monster from your field or graveyard. However, you have to use an Ancient Gear Golem that's on your field. But if you do, it can make up to 3 attacks during each battle phase. So it is kind of steep having to keep Ancient Gear Golem or a monster that's treated as it on the field, but the payoff is actually really nice. Next, moving on to the extra deck. This is probably going to go pretty quick because it's just 3 copies of everything. 3 copies of Ballista. So basically, when it's link summon, you add an Ancient Gear monster or a Gear Town from deck to hand. You can target spell or trap you control and a monster your opponent controls. Destroy your spell or trap, and then their attack and defense goes to 0. So this is just another way to get gear to proc Gear Town. 3 copies of Ancient Gear Howitzer. This guy is unaffected by everything. And then during your main phase, you can burn your opponent for 1,000. And then if it's destroyed, you can special summon an Ancient Gear monster from your deck, ignoring summoning conditions. Next, Ancient Gear Megaton Golem. So this one, it's basically just a regular Ancient Gear monster with 3,300 attack. Because, you know, it has the standard, if it attacks, you cannot, or your opponent can't activate spell or traps till the end of the damage step. But then if it gets fusion summoned using 2 or more Ancient Gear Golem, then it gets that many extra attacks. So like, let's say I have this in my hand, this on my field, and then we'll just say any other Ancient Gear monster, right? I fuse these 3 together, so since it was summoned using 2 Ancient Gear Golems, it gets to attack twice. That's basically how that effect works there. And then if it gets destroyed, you can special summon an ultimate Ancient Gear Golem from your extra deck, ignoring its summoning conditions. Or, excuse me, if it leaves the field because of an opponent's card effect. Not if it's destroyed. If it leaves the field because of a card effect. Then you get special summon the next guy from your extra deck, ignoring its summoning conditions, which is the OG Ultimate Ancient Gear Golem. He's got 4,400. If he attacks defense with his monster, he does piercing, standard Ancient Gear clause, and then when he gets destroyed, you can target Ancient Gear Golem in your graveyard, special summon it, ignoring summoning conditions. And finally, Chaos Ancient Gear Giant. So he takes 4 Ancient Gear monsters, so he's a little harder to summon, but he's totally worth it. He's unaffected by spell or trap effects, so unfortunately you can't do any limiter removal shenanigans on him, but it works for the others. And then he also makes to where your opponent's monsters can't activate their effects during the battle phase. He also does piercing and can attack all monsters your opponent controls on a standard 4,500 body. But of course, if you bring him out with Power Bond, he's 9,000. So, yeah. That's it for the deck profile. I hope you enjoyed. Like I said, this is just a goofy little OTK deck with big stupid beaters. I absolutely love that playstyle. Is it the best? Probably not. But is it fun? Oh yeah. So, like, subscribe, vote in the locals poll, all that good stuff, and I'll see you guys next time.